On today's podcast, we're talking about the top 5 reasons we avoid conflict, and then the positive nudge forward to enter into the courageous conversations we need to have in order to move relationships or conflicts forward. We all fall into times where we avoid conflict, but how can we become better at navigating our way through conflict in healthier ways? Welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced the best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back, breathe in good oxygen, and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. Hey everyone, it's Jason and welcome back to the Thermostat Podcast. Wherever you are and however you're coming to the podcast today, welcome in. So glad you are here. If you are one of the new folks, we continue to grow and spread in exciting ways all over the place. So if you are new to the podcast, welcome. So glad you're here. Hope you'll go back, check out old episodes, micro pods, topics, conversations I've had with thought leaders from around the world. Great stuff, and I hope you'll go back and dive in and find the stuff that resonates and adds value to your life and your work. If you are one of the folks that have been with us from the beginning, welcome back. I'm so glad this continues to add value and contribute to your life and your work. My commitment to you, as always, now that we have 200 or so episodes of this, is every time we come together, I want to make sure that we are helping you step back, take a deep breath. Hopefully the topics and the content is breathing good oxygen into you and thinking about the temperature that you're hoping to set in your life as a leader and certainly for the culture that you serve. So before we dive into today's topic, if you'll do me the quick favor, if you will rate the podcast 5 stars, these are the 3 ways that you can help this podcast and these messages amplify around the world. Rate the podcast on whatever platform you're on. 5 stars is, of course, encouraged. Leave a positive review with your own authentic words. Why is this important and why does this matter? Share it in your words. And then certainly pass it on. Share it to the people on your team or colleagues or on social media or whatever's authentic for you. Hey, here's a topic or a conversation we ought to be having on our team. Every time you share it, it spreads. And so thank you to everybody that does that. Conflict and discomfort are a part of life. We know that. How we navigate our way through conflict and discomfort is often what helps us grow or wither or move into healthier or unhealthier relationships, depending on our ability or inability to deal with conflict and deal with discomfort. We all are human, and so we typically do not want conflict or seek it out. But some get better about navigating their way through conflict. None of us want it or seek it out, and I think unless you're sick. But some people we flex the muscles of dealing with conflict and discomfort better than others, and so they're able to navigate their way through it more gracefully. They learn to flex those muscles that help them work through conflict in healthier ways. Others tend to run the other direction, hide from it, or pretend that it's not there. All of us are masters at avoiding conflict from time to time. All of us are. But our ability or inability to deal with it is obviously going to help move us in a direction of health and progress, or to hide and go the other direction. You may remember a recent episode that I did about the quote from the great philosopher Mr. Rogers, who once said, "Anything that is human is mentionable, and anything that is mentionable can be more manageable." When we can talk about our feelings, they become less overwhelming, less upsetting, and less scary. That was what Mr. Rogers said, and it was a mic drop, in my opinion, when he said it. So I love this idea that what is mentionable becomes more manageable. In a time when mental health challenges are on the rise, let alone the awareness we have around what is required to have healthy relationships and teams, we have to be able to make things that we're seeing, thinking, and feeling, we need to be able to make them mentionable. When they are mentionable, they become more manageable. They become less overwhelming and less scary. We then are able to begin to develop strategies to move us forward and stimulate progress on whatever we are working on together. So, on today's podcast, we're talking about the top 5 reasons we avoid conflict, and then the positive nudge forward to enter into the courageous conversations we need to have in order to move relationships or conflicts forward. We all fall into times where we avoid conflict, but how can we become better at navigating our way through conflict in healthier ways? But before we dive into today's topic, let's pause, take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Hey everyone, I want to take a quick minute just to remind you about one of my favorite days of the year that is coming up on Friday, November 3rd, 2023, for Thermostat Cultures Live. This is a powerful day of development that I host and an opportunity for us all to step back, take a deep breath, and calibrate our thermostats for the road ahead in our own leadership roles, our lives, and certainly with the cultures that we are creating. This year, it's a hybrid event, and there are limited seats available for the in-person VIP experience in Columbus, Ohio. That's right, it's a really cool in-person VIP experience in Columbus, Ohio, as well as there are online virtual seats available for those who want to engage from a remote location. As always, I'll be joined by amazing thought leaders from around the globe, and it will be a day you won't want to miss. So visit thermostatcultureslive.com, thermostatcultureslive.com to learn more and to reserve your seat or seats for your entire team. So today we're talking about how conflict and discomfort are a part of life, how we navigate our way through conflict, and discomfort is often what helps us either grow, or if we don't deal with it well, wither, or if we deal with it well, we'll move into kind of healthier relationships. And if we hide from it, avoid it, then our relationships unfortunately become unhealthy. So we all are human, all of us, and we typically do not want conflict or seek it out. None of us want conflict or want to have to deal with, a difficult situations. But the more we practice it and the more that we get better about leading and showing up in the midst of it, the better we get at navigating our way through conflict and discomfort. We learn to flex muscles that help us work through the conflict in healthier ways. None of us are perfect, but it helps us work through it in healthier ways. Others, we know, tend to run the other direction or hide or pretend the conflict or the discomfort's not there or to just mask it. And all of us are masters at avoiding the conflict from time to time, but we're remembering the words today on this podcast that what is mentionable becomes more manageable. So we're nudging ourselves forward into more productive and healthier ways of navigating our way through conflict. As I was reading the great Adam Grant, if you know Adam and his work, he's an author, he's an organizational psychologist, but reading one of his recent books, Think Again is the name of the book, really great book. I really enjoyed it and think Adam's work is fantastic. I was struck by a section where he acknowledges all the reasons why he avoids conflict. And it was honest and it was vulnerable. And I think it was right on for most of us humans that all of us avoid, conflict from time to time. And so I wanted to add to his list, but I see the kind of 4 reasons that he put in there, but I have another one that I think deserves to be in the list. So here are the top 5 reasons I'll personalize it as say but I also think we all avoid conflict. And I'm guessing if I feel this way, that there's some of you out there that this might resonate with you too. So the top 5 reasons that I or we avoid conflict. 1 is that it's easier. The first thing that I think needs to be thrown into this, and this is an addition, this is what I will add to Adam's great list, is it's easier. It's easier to avoid it. The fact of the matter is it's way easier to not address conflict. Easier in the sense that we don't, we can run away from and hide. Now, I believe that eventually you're going to have to deal with it. But in the moment, it's often easier for us to just walk the other direction or pretend that the conflict or the discomfort isn't there. This is the one thought I think was missing from Adam's list, because I know many of us avoid conflict because it seems to be much easier to just keep doing what we're doing and keeping our head down and trying to pretend it's not there. And so it's just easier to, we think life's going to be easier if we just never address it. That's the number one reason. The second reason is, I think in our minds, we think it saves time. That we often, if we're going to really deal with a conflict or deal with discomfort, we often have to stop our current mode of operations and make time to address it. And so in our heads, we think, oh, that's going to take more time. And so not only is it easier to avoid it, but it's also, there's less time that we have to commit to it. And so again, it seems easier to just keep going, but we often avoid it because it also is going to take more time to go and have the courageous conversation that we may need to have, or to go deal with the team issue, or to go identify something that we know is making us uncomfortable because it's not leading to the performance that we need or that we're looking for, or the culture isn't leading and acting and behaving in the way that we want. And so it's easier to not address it, and it may save time to just pretend as if it's not there. But the third reason also that I and we avoid conflict is that sometimes the third thing is it might save the friendship, or in our minds we say, well, we don't want to rock the boat because we want to save the friendship. We're all human, and we fear that the conflict that we have with somebody will end a relationship, and so we avoid it in an effort to keep everything seemingly okay, even though we all know deep down that everything isn't okay. When there's something serious that we need to conflict or discomfort that needs to be addressed. Our fear on what could go wrong keeps us focused on that, what could go wrong, rather than what could go right. What could be in the future that if we're willing to address it, that actually it may strengthen our relationship. But the fear in our head says it might, why would we address the conflict if, I'll just protect the relationship. I'll save the relationship. So it's easier. It saves time. It might save the friendship. The fourth reason that we often avoid conflict is that it might not help. We say it in our own heads, the stories we tell ourselves in our own heads is it might not help the situation to argue about it. And so related to the fear of talking ourselves into the complacency line of thinking, that it won't help things anyway. And we can let the kind of fear or kind of talking that narrative, to ourselves, which is really a narrative complacency. It's that line of thinking that, hey, it won't help things anyway, so why should I do this? And of course, there are many instances where arguing, quote unquote, arguing doesn't help the situation. I know, oftentimes I don't want to focus on the idea of arguing, and because oftentimes I think arguing and debating, the spirit of debate, isn't what often helps. But when I think of effective, courageous conversations, they aren't taking the mindset or approaching it about going to have an argument. They're actually focused on having a dialogue. And if you remember the episode that I once did that was all about the difference between discussion and dialogue, you'll remember that how we approach courageous conversations is as important as anything. And do we approach it from an argument standpoint that we're trying to win or debate, or are we seeking to understand the other person's position, and we're also trying to understand, well, what does progress look like for us, and are we able to bring it to the surface? So we can't get tricked into focusing on arguing, and we have to focus on solutions and seeking to understand the other point of view or the other person, and also to remember what's the purpose of all this. So it's easier, we tell ourselves, to avoid the conflict. It saves us time, we tell ourselves, to avoid the conflict. It might save the friendship, we tell ourselves, to avoid the conflict. And it might not help to argue, or it just won't help anyway, so we tell ourselves to avoid the conflict. And the fifth reason that I and we avoid conflict is that I don't want anyone to not like me or be mad at me. And so lastly, of course, I'll admit this, that I don't want people to be mad at me or not like me. And I think most people are that way. We don't want to feel like somebody doesn't like us or is mad at us. I'll be honest, is that I want to have good standing in all my relationships. I do hope people enjoy me, and I hope they like me. However, I can't keep that from getting in the way of honest and courageous conversations. I also know that at the core of my being. Even though I may have a desire for people to like me, and I don't want to be in bad standing. I don't need people to like me just for like the sense of that. I just hope they do. Not for me, but I just hope that. I don't want to have any burned bridges with anybody. But I can't let that get in the way of honest and courageous conversations that are focused on progress. I can identify my own need that I sense inside and then muster up the courage to stimulate progress. So like, even though I know I don't want somebody to be mad at me or not like me, I also know in my own gut the sense in times when like, all right, I need to muster up the courage in order to go have a courageous conversation that will stimulate progress. So those are the reasons I avoid conflict, but they also are things that I need to remember and identify when I find myself avoiding conflict that really needs attention. And I'm guessing that I'm not alone in this, and not only Adam Grant was identifying this for himself as well, but also all of us, there are reasons why we avoid conflict. And the point isn't just to point that out, but recognizing that those are the reasons that we might be avoiding it, and hopefully as a helpful and healthy nudge for me and for us towards willing to go have the courage to have the dialogue that is needed. It helps me seek out people in situations that I truly want to move forward with when I can catch myself. Am I truly just avoiding this conflict or avoiding this discomfort, or am I courageous enough to be committed to the relationship, to be committed to the progress that we're trying to see within the team or within the organization? And if I am, then I have to be willing to go have courage to not let myself just avoid this, but to be willing to have courageous conversations that are rooted in progress and care for another human being. So, some questions for us to ponder for today. What are the reasons you avoid conflict? And are there any relationships or situations that you are currently avoiding? You may have other reasons beyond the list of 5 that I shared today, but what are the reasons you avoid conflict? And are there any relationships or situations that you are currently avoiding? What are the courageous conversations that need to become more mentionable so that they can become more manageable? In your life, on your team, within your organization, what are the courageous conversations that need to become more mentionable so that they can become more manageable? And how can your team better commit to acknowledging what needs to be more mentionable in order to stimulate progress into the future? To make that commitment, let's not avoid the things that we really need to talk about. Let's be willing to be courageous and keep progress and care for each other and our culture at the forefront so we don't avoid things and are willing to go have those conversations. I hope today's episode got you thinking in many new ways. If a deeper dive into any of these topics, or you just have feedback for the episode or for any of the episodes, please contact us, info@jasonvbarger.com, and let us know. We'll continue to design content that meets you where you are and continues to hopefully stretch all of us. So I hope you'll go back, listen to old episodes and share them with the people around you as they resonate with you. And lastly, I'll just say this: cheers to you and the path ahead for all of us. And remember that the future of leadership is you, is me, is us. We've got an opportunity to get clear on the temperature that we hope to set, and then an opportunity to be courageous and committed to help breathe oxygen into the team and to the people around us. And so that we'll, that kind of oxygen that will sustain us for the path forward. So let's step back. Remember, be a thermostat and breathe good oxygen. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to you and your organization, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we are all ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.